have to read them in order. I'm sorry, I am just wired that way. It is what it is. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Just another struggling writer. The Beleaguered Author's one-stop shop for commiseration and hopefully inspiration. My name is Carrie Scher, and I am just another struggling writer. Well, today is September 1st, the Sunday of a long weekend, which means it is the perfect time for a cozy reset. If you're unfamiliar with my reset videos, what I'd like to do is look back on the month prior, reflect on the goals I set for myself, and then look ahead to the new month and set new goals. Lately, I've also been incorporating my reading recaps and my monthly TBRs into this video as well, and that's what we'll be doing today. So strap in, we've got a lot to get through. So starting with August, and first up, my reading goals for the month. So looking back at August, and specifically my reading goals, if you recall, if you watched my August Cozy Reset, you'll know that I set a 2-book-a-week goal for myself. And I finished the month out with 8, so right at that 2-book-a-week target. So before the recap, I'd just like to hit a couple of stats. Like I mentioned, I read 8 books with 2 DNFs. Of those 8 books, 3 were physical books and 5 were ebooks. I once again did not have an audiobook this month. Across those 8 books, I read 3,087 pages, which is just 10 pages short of my best reading month, which was January. I really thought I had an opportunity to catch it, but I did read 10 books in January, so I'm just glad that I made it close with 8. And of those 8 books, 6 were straight up fantasy, 1 a romantasy, and 1 was horror. And my average star rating came out to 3.4. Unfortunately, I did not have a 5-star read this month, but I did have a 1-star dragging that rating down. Now I'm going to briefly go over the books I read this month and what I rated them. If you want my full thoughts, I encourage you watch my weekly reading vlogs that I do every single week on Monday. And there you'll get a broader sense of what I thought of each of these books. So I started off August strong with A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is a YA fantasy. YA is a age category that I struggle with. I am not typically a YA reader, but the YA elements of this book did not feel very grating to me. And while the narration style did kind of wear on me a little bit and have me asking questions, and I did feel like the book needed to be at least 75 pages longer, I still really enjoyed it way more than I was expecting. I gave it 4 stars. I followed that up with Spellbreaker by Charlie Holmberg. Unfortunately, I just wasn't vibing with this book. I DNF'd it at about 25%. I put it back on my shelf because I think I could give it another shot, but this month was really all about protecting my pace and my peace with my reading, since I'm very wary of slumping again after that really long one I had earlier in the year. Unfortunately, I followed that up with The Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell, and around the 65% mark of that book, there was a scene that was extremely upsetting to me and I was unable to finish. Because I got so far in it, I did count it towards my reading goal, and I did rate it 1 star. After that, I read The Tainted Blade by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I am pleased to say that I loved this book. It was a great palate cleanse. It is a Sherlock and Watson styled murder mystery in a really unique fantasy setting. I have really come to enjoy Robert Jackson Bennett as a writer. I gave his last book that I read 5 stars, and I gave The Tainted Cup 4.5 stars. I also read What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher, which is the 2nd installment in her Sworn Soldier series, the first being What Moves the Dead, which was a retelling of one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories, The Fall of the House of Usher. What Feasts at Night was not a retelling, and I didn't love it quite as much. But T. Kingfisher is always a banger. I gave it 3.5 stars. I then read a horror novel called The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Muhammad, and horror is a genre that I don't really jive with. It's not really a fault of the genre, it's just me. I'm just not a very imaginative reader, I guess, and so the horror doesn't really get at me. I don't really feel tense or spooked by anything, but the writing was very, very good, and I enjoyed the story itself. I gave it 3 stars. I then had another DNF, The Sun and the Void by Gabriela Romero Lacruz, and this one was really disappointing for me because I thought it had a lot of potential, especially in the beginning. I enjoyed especially the journey that the main character Reina seemed to be going on, seeking love and acceptance in unorthodox ways. However, it just dragged so much. The second POV, I didn't really understand what it was for. A lot of the lore wasn't very well explained, and it just seemed to be taking forever. By the time I DNF'd at 52%, I just didn't know what more was going to come, and I still had 250 pages left. Then I read Paladin Strength by T. Kingfisher, which is the second in her Saint of Steel series, and I did not love the first book in this series, Paladin's Grace, quite as much as I did some other T. Kingfisher novels. I just really didn't jive with either of the protagonists. Fortunately, Paladin Strength was a great rebound. I really loved Clara, the female main character, even though the male character was, again, a little bit on the generic side. But the fact that there was no third act miscommunication and the way that the main male character kind of coaxes a reluctant love interest along, being very gentle and very understanding of her insecurities and not pushing her at all, really endeared me to this couple. I gave Paladin Strength 4 stars. Then I read A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and while I read another Rebecca Ross novel earlier this year and really enjoyed it, this one didn't quite hit the mark for me, and I think it has to do with the writing style, nothing to do with the book itself. It's just a writing style that doesn't particularly jive with me. I prefer my POVs and my narration to be really close and tight on the characters and really inspecting what they're thinking and feeling and changing and adapting to the circumstances. And I think this perspective was a little bit too broad and didn't go quite into the emotional depth that I was hoping for the main characters. I still will probably finish out the series since it is only a duology, but I ended up giving A River Enchanted 3.5 stars. And lastly, I finished out the month with Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and this is another YA book that I wasn't quite sure about, and I ended up really enjoying it way more than I ever anticipated. While it definitely wasn't perfect, it had a little bit of corniness and a little bit of dragging in the middle. I still think this is one of the best YA books I've read in a long time, and I ended up giving it 4 stars as well. So those are my reading goals for the month. I'm so proud of myself for actually meeting them after such a difficult spring and summer with reading, and I'm really looking forward to having another great month. As for my writing, my only goal was to finish the first draft of the outline, and I completely blew that out of the water. I ended up finishing both drafts of the early outline, and I am currently working on the final detailed outline. This will be the outline I end up taking into the draft, so the fact that I managed to accomplish all of this in 1 month is really surprising to me, but also really exciting. That means I can start the draft way earlier than I expected, which was October 1st. With any luck, it'll be mid-September now. If you're interested in my writing journey at all, I have weekly writing vlogs that I do where I talk about my step-by-step process and my fears and excitement and everything to do with writing. I highly encourage those if you're interested in my writing journey at all. And then lastly, my personal goals. My biggest one was to start a daily walking habit. I bought myself a little walking pad, which is like a miniature treadmill that you can just tuck up under your bed, with the idea that I wouldn't have to go to the gym to get some exercise. I could just slide this out from under my bed and do some walking every night as I watch TV or whatever. And unfortunately, I think I used it 3 times. I'm still really struggling with that. I haven't forgotten about it. I am going to keep trying at it. I just don't know that I'm going to make it a set in stone goal like I did this month. I also had some goals for this channel. Some goals I don't have any control over, like views and subscriber counts, but the things I could control, I believe that I achieved, which was adding some shorter form videos every week. And I did achieve that. Every week I posted either a friendly writing tip or a 60-second book review. Hello, Bean. Is this your way of telling me you want out? In their own way, they help me grow my channel, and I am looking forward to doing more of them in the new month. And that pretty much wraps up August. It was kind of an up and down month in terms of reading, but really, really strong in terms of writing, which is all I can ask for, really. But now we're moving on to September. And with the start of this new month, I am looking to build on the successes I achieved last month, both in reading and in writing. First, with reading. Last month, I said 2 books a week. And for the most part, I did that. I needed the help of some shorter books, but I got there in the end. So for September, I'm stepping that up a little bit. I am still 4 books behind on my reading pace for the year, and I'd like to make up some more ground this month. So to that end, my new goal for September is to read 10 books. I know it's possible. I did it in January. I do have a trip at the end of the month wherein I anticipate getting a ton of reading done. So I think this is actually doable. And like I said earlier, I've worked out a really nice system for myself with my library ebooks and my home physical books. And as long as I keep that up, I think I can get 10 books done pretty easily. As for my writing goal, it's pretty simple. I want to finish this detailed outline and start the draft. That is so scary and exciting to think that I am already almost ready for the draft. If you've watched any of my writing vlogs, you know that drafting is one of my least favorite parts. It is very difficult for me, which is why I am over preparing. And the idea that in 2 weeks time, I could be setting pen to paper and actually writing the first words of this draft is, again, scary, but exciting. I think I am ready. I have done a lot of work. I have thought of this through more deeply than I have any other project that I've ever worked on, and I feel more prepared than ever to actually draft. And I haven't talked about this too much because I don't want to jinx myself, but my long-term goal is to have this draft done, hopefully by the end of the year. If not, then maybe end of January. I know the holidays really throws a wrench in things, but I'm hoping that NaNoWriMo really pushes me to the finish line, or at least closer to it. But we'll leave that for later. For now, like I said, in September, just finish this detailed outline and get started on the draft, hopefully around mid-month. As for my channel goals, there are certain things that are outside of my control that I'm not going to worry too much about. But I had so much fun with filming the short form videos that I'd like to add 2 more for the weekends as well. Ow! That was unkind. I've got these little tassels and she is enjoying herself. Do you mind? I'll probably add another 60-second book review because I'm really behind on those. If I want to finish them before the end of the year, I do need to be doing them twice a week. And then I'm not sure what I'll do for Sunday. It'll probably be different every week. And that I think will add some spontaneity to the channel while giving it a video every single day. So shorts, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays and Sundays. And that wraps up September, except for one thing, my TBR. Last month, I started something new with my TBR construction in which I wasn't planning it at all. Instead, I was picking one book at a time out of my TBR Mimic, and when I completed it, I would draw a new one. I was supplementing that with library books, and I found that system to work really well for me. So I'm not going to mess with success. I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did in August. I'm going to choose one random book out of my TBR Mimic and in between read library books. But I will go over some of the library books that I have out currently and some of my holds that I expect to come to me in the month of September. So the next book that I have out is What the River Knows by Isabella Banez. I have tried this one before. It is a YA fantasy described as the Mummy meets Death on the Nile, and I think that is such a cool concept. At the time, I wasn't really prepared to read another YA. It was just one of those moments where I knew I needed something different if I wanted to keep up my momentum. But coming off the heels of a YA that I really liked, I think this is the right time to read this book. After that, I have Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is a light fantasy romance that I have heard great things about. I really enjoyed the first couple books of the Stariel series, which is in kind of a similar vein. It's more romance forward rather than fantasy forward, so I think this could also be a really good read for me. Then I have Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I know nothing about this book other than that it has been described as weird. The Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashem. I have tried to read this book once and it was in the middle of my slump, so I didn't get very far. And I have checked it out a couple of other times since then and just didn't get to it, but I am determined to make September when I finally read this book. I also have The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. It has been on my list for a long time to get into the Discworld series, so this is going to be my first attempt. I also have Dragon Rider by Taran Matharu, and this is another one that I've tried. I've checked out a couple of times and just didn't get to. I think I read maybe the first page one time. It just hasn't been on my priority list, but I'm going to make it a priority this month. And the last of the books I currently have checked out is All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries, and I have been on the lookout for Murderbot at my bookstores, both independent, chain, used. can't find it anywhere. So I am just going to check it out from the library and finally get started on this much beloved series. As for my holds, coming up in about 2 weeks, I have Fireborn by Rosaria Munda. I believe this is another YA and another dragon book as well, but I've heard really good things about it. Also coming up in about 2 weeks is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and this one has just so much buzz around it. I've heard a lot of people say that they love it, love the coziness, love the style of storytelling, the romance. I'm not sure how I'm going to take to it, but I'm looking forward to diving in. In 3 weeks, I have The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song, and yes, I do own this one physically, but it is my Fairy Loot edition, and it is too pretty to taint with my hands, so I'm gonna get it from the library and read that version. Also in 3 weeks, I have The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean, and I don't know anything about this, but I am obsessed with phoenixes. I have one tattooed on my back, so I went through a phase where I was just looking at all the Phoenix books, anything tagged as Phoenix in the Libby app, and checking them out. So in 4 weeks, I have Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This is going to be my attempt to read Brando Sando for the first time, and I understand that his early work is probably not the best way to do that, but I can't start in the middle. And I know they're not all necessarily connected, but if they're part of the Cosmere, I have to read them in order. I'm sorry, I am just wired that way. It is what it is. That being said, I am going to be grading it on a little bit of a curve, knowing that his later books are probably better and are certainly much more beloved. Also in 4 weeks, I have Trial of the Sun Queen by Nisha J. Tooley, and I don't know anything about this one other than that every time I see the cover in my app, I feel really drawn to it and pulled to read it. I believe it's a romantasy, and I believe it's probably the style of romantasy that I'm not as fond of, but I'm not going to keep denying myself checking it out because I just feel so drawn by those covers. Whoever did the cover design, kudos to you. And lastly, also in 4 weeks, Heavenbreaker by Sarah Wolf. The only thing I know about this one is robots that are jousting. Sold. So those are the library books. I probably won't get to all of them. I tend to, if there isn't a hold on a book that I haven't gotten to yet and my loan is coming up, I just renew it and then it goes back to the bottom of the list as I read whatever is I have to send back next. So probably won't get to all of those, especially some of those later ones that are coming in 3 or 4 weeks towards the end of the month. Those will probably get pushed into October. But now is the time I am most excited for, and that is the random draw. I am going to be trying for a physical book here. Now, if a ebook comes up on here that I am really excited to read and I have a couple in mind, I will stick with it. But for the most part, I'm going to try and get a physical read out of this Mimic. And again, that is just to encourage a system that is already working. So, without further ado, oh, that's right. Last month I shook it. Because it's so full, when I mix it up like that, they all just pop out. So let's shake. And I'm just going to take this one here off the top. And this is a really late one. So probably a physical book. That is 178. Okay, 178 came out to Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis, and I recently hauled this book in a book box that I get every month. And what I understand about this book it is about a young man who wakes up in a laboratory with his memory missing, and he is hearing all these stories about an evil dark sorcerer, only to discover that he is the dark sorcerer in question. And now he has to figure out what his life is going to be like after this disaster that took away his memory. I was sort of hoping to save it for October, but it's nice and short, just about 350 pages, so that'll really encourage me to continue to read. It's a standalone, so the commitment is really low, and the premise is just really cute. So I will be starting this probably today, and I'll let you know my thoughts in my next reading vlog. And that just about wraps up this cozy reset. We've reflected on August, we've looked ahead to September, we've chosen a new book to read. I think we are in a really good position to smash this new month. Thank you so much for watching. I so appreciate it. If you like my content and want to support my channel, please like and subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me and help this channel grow. In my next video, I will have another writing vlog for you. And unfortunately, my writing has been on the decline the last couple of days. I've really been struggling with this one scene in my outline. It is very important and I want to get it right. But that will be in my next vlog. I hope you look forward to it and I will see you then.